back, everyone. If you're already familiar with Jason Silva, then you know it's going to be a real trippy, far out, just beautifully written piece of work. If you're not familiar, Jason is a futurist, a speaker, an author, a writer. Those are the same thing, right? He's a public figure well known for inspiring awe. A lot of his content and the topics that he talks about has to do with things that I'm really into, things like consciousness, psychedelia, awareness, and just generally motivational, inspiring things. I just saw this video recently. I think I saw it for the first time last week, and it just blew my mind. The AI visuals that are used, I believe it was rendered in Midjourney and some other tool in like a week, along with, Jason's writing, as usual, just knocks it out of the park. But given the current state of things today, just the air of confusion and just general fear and uncertainty surrounding a lot of what it is that we're inundated with in the media, I just wanted to take this moment to share this video with you guys, talk about it a little bit, and see what kind of takeaways we can take away from it. All right, here goes. So what is a psychedelic puppet? Love this. Reminds me of Arrival, the movie. Setting the scene for the arrival, the exposure, the expose on the psychedelic puppets.
Here are some of the many things we don't know about the psychedelic puppets. Who are they? Trying to answer this in any meaningful way is hampered by the fact that outside of being able to see them and hear them, the puppets leave absolutely no footprint.
So the way that this starts, the assumption here, the bit of storytelling is these psychedelic puppets. We don't know what they are or anything like that, but the assumption is that they're here.
They are something marvelous and mysterious, glittering, shimmering, shedding light of many colors, movement, sound, a transformative hierophany of integrated perception, as Terence McKenna would say. The complex wave of the angel peacock, iridescent, transformative mystery. Yet the chemical makeup of their bodies is unknown. They emit no waste, no gas, no radiation. Assuming the puppets communicate with each other, they do so without detection. The air between the puppets is untroubled by sonic emission or light waves. Are they scientists or tourists? If they're scientists, they don't seem to ask a lot of questions. Why are they here? And where did they come from? The world's most decorated scientists remain dumbfounded. The most plausible theory was put forth, controversially, by a poet. The Irish poet John O'Donoghue, channeling philosopher Alain de Botton, explains. What you need to understand is that the puppets are from a place beyond the literal grid, he mused. They represent a truth of a deeper sort. The puppets exist, but they do so metaphorically, he explained. They exist poetically. They exist subjectively. They exist paradoxically. And they exist narratively. And yet, astoundingly, here they are, visibly beheld. How to explain this? One theory, proposed by the mystical psychologist Carl Jung, is the concept of synchronicity. In synchronicity, the objective world and the narrative world touch. When this happens, we breach the chrysalis of limited perception and become privy to the mystery and the paradox that lies at the heart of the human condition, beyond the realms of our Newtonian and myopic absolutism and our hardened lack of imagination. It is here where the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics converges with quantum mechanics and gives rise to an account of reality that is inherently
Mathematics is so efficient, it does not make
informed by
sense.
consciousness and therefore
I love it.
increasingly psychedelic. Perhaps the puppets didn't come from anywhere. Perhaps they've been here all along, waiting for us to notice them. The puppets are Schrodinger's cat in the box. They exist and don't exist at the same time. They laugh at death and they dance in quantum superposition until they are observed or measured, that is. Behold the psychedelic puppets. You can see them. You can touch them. You can describe them empirically and objectively. And yet, that account will only constitute a kind of naive realism. The realism of hardened materialists, literalists, and reductionists, those stuck exclusively in the psychological poverty and existential dread of the objective world.
All right, so I'm going to pause it right there because I wanted to make a comment. This part of the video was actually where it all kind of turned for me, where I came to understand a little bit more clearly what it was that they were trying to say, I think. The story of the psychedelic puppets and the fact that, you know, they exist metaphorically, they don't leave any trace, but at the same time, you know, paradoxically, we have the ability to see them and to experience them. And what Jason may be referring to there, subtly, is, I think he's referring to the DMT machine elves that you run into, you know, when you're on DMT. And, you know, this is such a great foil for, I don't know. Given everything that's going on with the UAPs being reported all over the East Coast, and a lot of the uncertainty that just exists in the world, these psychedelic puppets are a perfect foil for this otherworldly, non-human intelligence that people have claimed to have encountered. And so, you know, we have a representative of some people, some portion of the population that has direct firsthand experience with these psychedelic puppets. But at the same time, you know, for the vast majority of the population, that type of experience is not on the menu. Be that as it may, the issue that arises then isn't necessarily one of the people that have experienced DMT and the ones who have not, or the people that have had a mystical experience that allows them to know and understand the metaphor that's being used, or that's being, you know, that is using the psychedelic puppets as a character or as a part of the metaphor. It's just going against the literalism about the materialism that is just so easy to fall back on. I talk about this a little bit in the blog post I made about this video. I'll put a link to it in the description below. But I feel that a lot of the just the meaning being gone from life, it happens because we oftentimes look externally for things to give us meaning. And I know for me personally, when I was growing up, getting a job, making $100,000, making six figures, and getting to that level was a goal, an objective. And once you achieve those types of objectives, you come to realize that the objective in and of itself has no real meaning. And the same type of, um, externally originating um, goal or target, or I guess any type of real gravity that you give to something external to yourself, right, outside of your experience, I think is just setting you up for never being able to truly understand that what you make of this life is entirely up to you. I think it's very easy to fall under the spill of, you know, it makes sense that a natural progression from struggling to survive, fighting for survival, and as a society, we've clawed and crawled our way up to this point where so much of the world is living in relative excess and just like pure comfort, and it leads us to the point where now that we don't have that existential battle to fight any longer, or so the comforts of modern life have us believe. The real challenge then becomes finding meaning in this world. And I think for a long time, people used to think that that was just like a first world problem. And in many senses, it is. Without the work that had been laid by the people before me, and without my parents raising me the way that they did and providing me with the resources that I had growing up, I wouldn't be in the position that I am today. I understand that I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, and that there's very little that I have done as an individual to deserve the type of life that I live. But ultimately, the fact that that remains a first world problem, it doesn't make it any less important for that type of meaning to be found by people. And I think throughout history, we've had, you know, just volumes upon volumes of these books and songs and plays, and all art is created in the search for meaning. And I think the answer to that is just like Jason Silva was talking about. The search for meaning of life is not found in the structure of life itself. The meaning is always meant to come from out of bounds. And, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but the meaning is supposed to come from inside. Moving on.
Again, let us not sidestep the impossibly paradoxical quality of the psychedelic puppets. The puppets are made of material molecules that somehow give rise to direct experiences of such mystic rapture that baseline perception crumbles in a kind of ontological slapstick, with the puppets then emerging, giggling in reality's pixelating wake, with what in some circles is referred to as a shit-eating grin.
Yeah, he's definitely talking about DMT there.
They are, we think, the cosmic joke, the hitchhiker's guide to the galaxy. The scholar Richard Tarnas believes the puppets have a special relevance for the schism in the modern worldview between the meaning-seeking human subject and the meaning-voided objective world.
Yeah. Case in point, that's exactly what we were talking about just a little bit ago. The fact of the matter is the objective world is without meaning inherently.
They are here, it seems, to help humans bridge these domains before it's too late. As we marvel at the puppets, we are blinded, absolved of all paradox. Their mere existence reconciles contradictions. As we behold the puppets, we have a direct experience of the numinous, bearing witness to two impossibly paradoxical yet increasingly self-evident propositions. Could consciousness be more primary than matter? The puppets think so. Is imagination more fundamental than atoms? Of course, they tell us.
Super important point there as well. It's long argued. This is the materialist versus the non-materialist argument. What comes first, consciousness or matter? Materialists are the ones that believe that the things that we can see, touch, hear, smell, feel are the only things that they really exist. But the counter argument to that, this is the school of thought that I'm more aligned to, is without the awareness, without the ability to perceive that something exists, it wouldn't matter if matter existed. And then secondly, this leads us to the point that he just said, like, imagination is more fundamental than atoms. That's a correlation to the thing that we were just talking about before. The thing that I think is, big takeaway number 2, imagination. It really is about that imagination and imagining what it is that you want out of life and out of yourself. So imagination, without the imagination to want to do something, it does not matter if there are the atoms, exist to create the configuration that it was that you were hoping for. You have nothing to hope for if you have no imagination.
The puppets exceed the constraints of this dimension. They are a Neoplatonic allegory of the cave. We think they reside inside a kind of tesseract, perhaps in the 4th dimension, outside of time, like a motley crew of psychedelic prophets from the past, present, and future simultaneously.
This guy looks like David Cho.
One way to think of them is as psychedelic tricksters, fictional characters famously camouflaged in children's fantasy stories. They are Willy Wonka. They are the Mad Hatter. They are the White Rabbit. They are creatures from Wonderland. They are totems of ontological uncertainty. They are the never-ending story.
Spooky.
Our hypothesis is that they exist in the same way fiction exists.
I love that.
Like dreams, they do not lack reality. They are real patterns of information, ensorcelled into perception by our willingness to dream out loud, as Darwin's pharmacy author and ecodelic psychonaut Rich Doyle once prophesized.
I love the concept of that dreaming out loud. And again, it fits in so well with the theme of this video. Be loud about what it is that you want. Express it. Without expression, there's literally no way. It's impossible for the desires and the wishes that you have inside to be manifested. What were the exact words? Our willingness to dream out loud. So much of what it is that we hold so dear and value so highly, a lot of it is considered unwritten. They're like unwritten laws or unwritten rules of how to X, Y, or Z. And, I think it's time that we start saying a lot more of these things out loud, being a little bit more explicit about what it is that we expect of each other as human beings, and what it is that we want out of our experience here on Earth, and what our aspirations are. I think in today's world of, everything is determined by whether or not it can potentially turn a profit. We're all too quick to look at whether it makes dollars and cents before it is that and that is, we use that as the ultimate arbiter of whether or not something is worth doing, as opposed to whether or not it's something that we want to do. So yeah.
Psychedelic psychonaut Rich Doyle once prophesied. In fact, like great fiction, the psychedelic puppets are, in some sense, even more truthful than reality. Besides, they tell us, the word reality should always have quotation marks around it.
If you don't understand that one, leave a comment in the comments and I will try to explain to you.
But what does this even mean? We just don't know. But let's get back to what we do know. How do they communicate? T.S. Eliot once said, music, like poetry, should communicate before it is understood. And so too for the psychedelic puppets.
When you know, you know.
They are here to teach and to reorient, they say. Your
So am I.
map of the world is wrong, they tell us.
The map of the world is wrong. Let's hear the rest of this part and I'll jump into that.
Where you have centered physics, you should actually place literature as the central metaphor to map reality.
The map of the world is wrong. Where we had previously placed physics, we should have literature as the central metaphor to map reality. I covered this a little bit in the blog post that I had made about this as well, but I want to talk about it to the YouTube audience also. Robert Anton Wilson, I believe it was, once said, "The map is not the territory." Maps are representations of the territory, of a territory, and in the olden days when people used to navigate to places they weren't familiar with, sometimes for a living, they used maps. The maps served a very specific purpose to give the person that's sailing this uncharted territory, or this territory that's new to them, the ability to navigate more easily. So what was once used as a tool that provided an approximation of what the territory looked like, now in today's day and age, we've circumnavigated the world. We know what the world looks like, quote unquote, and we have a map of every location that we're aware of on Earth. What happens there, and what I would think Jason Silva meant here by the maps are all wrong, is we are using, we use these maps to try to figure out where we're going, but the maps can only tell you where someone has already been. Really the only way forward and the only way up is for us to be not afraid to explore uncharted territory together, as long as we know that it's headed in the direction that we want to take it.
Truth, but no logic, is our motto, and it is as important as rational thought. We aren't after accuracy, they tell us. We are after poetry.
That, my friends, is poetry. We are not after accuracy. It is not accuracy that we're after.
The message.
It's rather
Where
poetry.
we're going, said the puppets, channeling futurist Mark Pesce, the simulated and the real are going to get really blurry.
And I believe this is an AI model of Jason Silva, but agreed with Mark Pesce. The simulated and the real are already really blurry. The amount of information that we take into our heads, on these things, this is all digital. It can easily be manipulated, and I don't really have any control. I have zero control over the input that is put onto the internet that I receive on this thing. Things are getting really blurry. The only way to know how to navigate this is to root yourself in the truth.
and we don't have the right tools of mind. You must take a look at cultures that describe the world magically, that understand that perception shapes what you are, and you shape what you see. You must embrace metaphorical literacy. You must become sophisticated rhapsodic poets, ecstatic technicians of the sacred, and you must sharpen your intuition. The puppets elaborated their discursive disclosure. In a world where anything you want is true, the only way to deal with this is by learning how to deal with your will. Dealing with will is what magic has, in all cultures, always been about. This is why we, the psychedelic puppets, don't go insane when the world just disappears. We're ready for it. With this, the puppets smiled, possessed by Terence McKenna, and they summarized. What we're talking about here is that humans must use their technological wizardry, their dazzling creativeness, as a means for the imagination to summon its own literalization. With science, you must explicate. With poetry, you must implicate.
That's a really powerful combination of words as well. With science, you must explicate. With poetry, you must implicate. With science, you explain how things are. With poetry, you can only imply. And in the implication that is made through poetry, it leaves the door open for imagination to come in and really make it special. With science, you can explain how to build something in terms of, the different pieces it requires, how a structure is going to be built from the ground up, with a foundation, then with frames, etc. That's the how in terms of the process. But I feel like the how in terms of the attitude, the spirit with which you do something, that is the part that is, very understandably left out of the textbooks. But unfortunately, I feel like they've been left out of a lot of other places as well. Maybe by intention, maybe not.
As Ursula Le Guin said, think of us as a kind of theosophical epiphany of language trying to bootstrap itself towards realms of Platonic perfection, which as organic beings you experience as love, said the puppets. Like jazz musicians, the puppets continued to riff and rhapsodize through a tumbling thicket of ideas with such a sharp and vital alacrity that it can take our breath away.
It's all jazz,
Love,
baby.
beauty, truth. These are the vectors of human becoming. They always have been. They always will be. And the technologies that open these paths for you are no more and no less powerful than the human beings that wield them. So this is an enterprise of integrity and millennial implication. And what lies as our goal is true humanness in sympathetic symbiosis with the planet.
True humanness in sympathetic symbiosis with the planet. The fact of the matter is we are of the planet. We're not on it.
That is the challenge at the end of history. But how will we find you? The scientist said to the puppets. We might need more of your wisdom to solve this fucked up world. With this, the puppets turned, smiled, and offered a book of lyrics that brought tears to our eyes. And suddenly, they offered a riddle in song form. Make believe we're everywhere. We're hidden in the lines. And there upon the pages is the answer to our never-ending story. Rhymes that keep their secrets will unfold behind the clouds.
I love this. Be absurd, be awestruck, be kind, and play. And because it's AI, all the numbers are out of order. There's two twos. Things are not in line, but still nailed it.
And there upon the rainbow is the answer to your never ending story.
Damn. The Arrival of the Psychedelic Puppets by Jason Silva and Brad Netchik. Beautiful. So that was something else, huh? The the biggest thing for me is when this video came out, it was right as the UAPs sightings, in the New Jersey area were really picking up steam in the news. And I really liked how that story played along with this video and the way that this video was framed as like the arrival of the psychedelic puppets, almost as though the psychedelic puppets were the ones behind the drones and the UAPs. But the fact of the matter is people are always looking towards, or people have a tendency to, let me not speak in absolutes like that. People have a tendency to try to make sense of what's going on. And obviously, I understand the fear and concern angle of it. But the fact of the matter is with the things that we don't, it's not as though this is a weather phenomenon that we've seen before. It's not something that we're intimately familiar with. But, so I understand how and why fear can come into the picture. This could be something, the things that I've heard so far are Iran has a mothership off the coast, off the East Coast, and that's where all the drones are coming from, and they're, all controlled by Iran. Another theory that I had heard is that the drones are radiation sniffing drones. They are acting on a tip that some nuclear weaponry or a nuclear bomb has made it into the United States through the eastern seaboard, and the drones are just flying everywhere, not giving a fuck if people see them flying because they're looking for an atom bomb. That's scenario number 2. Scenario number 3 is perhaps, who knows, maybe this is aliens. This is non-human intelligence, and this is the way that they're making contact with us. In terms of the arguments that they look like, regular consumer drones, one of the fun arguments that I heard against that is that the UAPs actually can use cloaking technology and they're intelligent, and so they're trying to blend in with the things that they're seeing in our skies. But, all that to say, no one really knows what's going on, and until it's said that someone knows, everything is conjecture. But ultimately, nothing matters in terms of there's nothing for us to fear. The thing that I hope for, if I could snap my fingers and this wish be granted, it would be that the attitude that we all adopt towards something like this, something unknown, something otherworldly or non-human, it would really be great if we could all, as a collective, come to the understanding that this whole earth, everything on it, everything beyond it, everything beyond that is actually all one, and that we're all just little pieces of this gigantic thing, and there's no separating us from the UAPs that are coming to visit. They just happen to come from a different place. The fear and the uncertainty over what may happen or what could happen as a result of these things coming and being hostile, I think is unfounded, in that we've never dealt with this before. The only media that I can even think of that comes remotely close to this is anything having to do with alien invasions and Independence Day, for example. I would consider that propaganda. But the point that I'm trying to drive home is that there ultimately is nothing to fear. The lesson that we should learn from the psychedelic puppets that Jason Silva was telling us about, which I believe I may be a psychedelic puppet myself now, is just a recontextualization of the life that we're living. And instead of thinking about my life as this one little unit and me being so concerned about how it turns out, the fact of the matter is it doesn't matter what it is that I do as an individual against the grand scheme of things. But instead, um, I'm not in this to become recognized or known as an individual for anything that I have shared. Everything I'm sharing, everything. None of this is original. Um, I don't want that. What I want more than anything is just the spreading of this awareness, of this freedom from fear, of having hope, of being able to appreciate the current moment and having hope because of that, despite our past. Just the ability to move beyond the trauma of our past so we can move forward as a collective into the future. That's what I want. But, until that day comes, the only thing that I'm able to do, the only thing that I want to do is to continue to share pieces of art or news or information or stories that inspire me and make me believe that it would help inspire others as well. So if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and leave me a comment. Make any suggestions as for other types of content that you may want to see or other things you want to hear me talk about. That being said, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time.